All right, thank you guys for joining us. Molly Nevola here in the digital newsroom. We just had reporter Ronica Cleary on. It was so great to chat with her about her experience on Saturday at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Sorry to everyone whose audio was perhaps faulty. We were efforting that just now, but it seems to be up and running now. So I'm here. It is May Day, May 1st, and we have a lot of rallies going on across the whole United States, across the world even. Hundreds are gathering to protest immigration and President Trump's first 100 days in office, as well as some of his policies, including, take a live look right here at San Francisco. Check it out. This is what it looks like here. I don't have any sound on this, but this is where hundreds today were expected to come together, and here they are, to protest at ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement building, to demand an end to the Trump administration's racist anti-immigrant policies is what they're saying, and to disrupt business as usual on May Day. So it's a little bit of a rough feed here. That is a live look at the ICE building there in San Francisco. And now over to New York City. Check it out. This is the hustle and bustle of New York. Similar May Day rally in Union Square in New York City. So that is a live look at New York. The typical busyness and hustle and bustle of the crowd. But if you were joining us before, you got to see Ronica in here. I want to show you quickly some of her pictures from Saturday night. She was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Let's go over to this screen. Here we go. Okay, so you have me and you have some of her tweets from the night. So if you weren't with us earlier, check it out. She was able to sit at the Fox table at the White House Correspondents' Dinner her first time. And of course, it was an abnormal, as she was telling us on the show just earlier, it was a little bit unconventional. The president himself was at a rally in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So a lot of the people that were covering the president were up in Pennsylvania doing their job. But check out this picture that you see in your upper left-hand corner. She met some great people that she covers the White House with. She's often in the White House press briefing room with some of these journalists. I'm going to scroll through a little bit, a moment to recognize the people who cover the White House in that room. She said there were over 2,000 people, more than 2,000 people, and a few people stood because they get to go often or daily to the White House to cover the president. And then, of course, the comedian from The Daily Show, Hassan Minhaj, was there. I caught a few of his clips. I don't know if any of you guys were watching on C-SPAN or getting any of the clips that all the news outlets had, but there were some funny punches in there. As is usual for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This was Ronica getting out of her Uber on a Ford F-150, which was cute, that she had to kind of jump into in her dress. And just a couple more pictures of the room behind the scenes. This is all from her Instagram account, at Ronica Cleary. You can follow her there. And this woman, Lauren Blanchard from Fox News, she met during her previous job. So it was nice for her to kind of meet up with an old friend there at the dinner on the red carpet. Couple more pictures for you guys. We'll bring you back to a shot of New York City.
So, what's it? Oh, this is the best part of the thing. The music's pretty good, and it's old school. It's new stuff. So let's leave a nice wide shot up.
Yeah, this is great.
All right.
Do you want to put this down so it's not like on you?
I'm not having any kids. It's all good. Yeah, factory's closed.
We were taking the train up to Traffic Lot, and my friend's husband was sitting in front of me. There's like a bunch of
So guys, you're looking at live pictures of New York City. This is Union Square in Manhattan, and what you hear is just behind the scenes from the photographer who was there. This is all live and raw video that you're getting. This is a shot of Union Square. It's a little rough video. Thousands are gathering in so many cities today to protest immigration policies and other policies of the Trump administration. In collusion with May Day itself, May 1st,
I mean, these people really have
May Day
nothing to
rallies
do, like...
across the country. There's even one in DC today, and it sort of is jumbled up with the protest that Ronica, who we had on, is going to be covering. So she'll be there down at the White House to check out
on the faith
protest that is reportedly going to march from DuPont Circle down to the White House itself. It's later this afternoon, so she will be able to get hopefully some live footage for her live shot in the evening show, the 5 o'clock tonight on our broadcast. But you're just looking at live pictures here on our digital broadcast of New York City on May Day.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I still want to get behind these guys. This is perfect. I got my sticker jacket on. I'm blowing up. I'm blowing up.
I wouldn't scream that at a rally.
Yeah. All right.
So I'm just reading now that a day without immigrants type of strike that we've seen before here in DC was planned for today in New York City. So again, you're looking at live pictures of Union Square in Manhattan, but these rallies apparently are happening all over Manhattan, down in the financial district near the JP Morgan building, and Mayor de Blasio is expected to speak later this evening in like the 5 o'clock hour regarding all of this activity and the protests across the country. So a big day in a lot of the big cities here in the nation, across the nation, for May Day and May Day rallies, including in Washington, D.C. So we'll have more on that this evening on our evening broadcast. This midday show is for you to get a live look at some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that's happening live during the day when you don't often get to click on or see this on TV. So we want to bring this to you live. Our sister station up in New York is getting this footage in Manhattan. So enjoy this. We're going to bring you to another segment in just a moment.
I can. What time is it?
It's 12:01.
Are they taking us?
I'm on the bridge.
What's happening?
I'm on the bridge. I don't know.
I'll hold it.
I just wanted to offer that up.
No, when we're standing here for like hours, I'll put it on the little tripod. Yeah, this comes out, and the legs come. And you, yeah, it's a good one.
It unscrews and then.
Worst case scenario.
That's the kind of modified the next invention.
Oh, without a doubt, because yeah, just for the it's a. It's an emergency tripod. Yeah, you're gonna be on risers. You're gonna shake. You're gonna have to. It's gonna shake.
Well, no, we have tripods, but like the monopod's great.
Just in case.
The variation is nice.
Right.
By the way, she offered security on Friday. I said no.
Friday?
On Friday.
Oh, no, it's fine. There's two guys we gotta feed. You guys get
I'm just gonna just walk.
All right.
I'm leaving my bag by you.
See something, say something.
All right, guys. So a lot of May Day protesting around the country today. A lot of marches for immigrant rights and people who are rallying and protesting against President Trump policies. It's happening all over the nation, all over the world, really. We had some footage of Paris, France earlier. If we get any more of that, I'll bring that right to you. But this is live in New York City, a little bit of rough video from our photographers there. And earlier we also had a protest going on in San Francisco. So there's a lot of stuff happening around. But I do want to bring you back to earlier this morning. We had a really cool video from NASA. SpaceX launched the Falcon 9 rocket. This is video from NASA earlier this morning. This was a mission that was delayed from Sunday out of the Kennedy Space Center down in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Check out this video.
Stage 1 fuel load closed out.
We're just inside the 6-minute mark, and all systems are go right now from Kennedy Space Center, pad 39A. Now, if you tuned in yesterday, you noticed that at about 52 seconds before liftoff, our launch director called a hold over the countdown net due to an out-of-family reading on a first stage sensor. Now, we have hundreds of sensors positioned throughout the vehicle on the first stage, second stage, as well as our fairing that help us monitor all kinds of variables from acceleration, pressure, temperature, and numerous other parameters. And while this particular sensor did have a redundancy, the readings it was providing for us were out of tolerance, and so out of an abundance of caution, we opted to hold launch and replace that sensor in question. That replacement has been made, and we are currently go for today's launch. Right now, just coming up on the 5-minute mark here, we are concluding loading on the RP1 onto our first stage. That is, RP1 is refined kerosene. That is one of our propellants for the mission. And we are topping off liquid oxygen as well on that first stage. And we're going to keep topping that off for about 2 more minutes. We're loading over 1.1 million pounds of propellant on the first and second stage combined. Are loaded at this point in the count.
Strong back lower started.
Cape Canaveral and the Kennedy Space Center have given us a go for today's launch. No issues to report from the range. We have been keeping our eye on some upper level winds. As of now, though, looking into the latest balloon readings, we continue to be go for today's launch. We do have a 2-hour launch window. If anything were to come up, we would have the opportunity to potentially recycle and target the end of this launch window. And we do also have a backup launch opportunity tomorrow at the same time.
Cradle arms coming open.
Just so that you guys have a little background on this, this is a classified U.S. intelligence mission. I'm reading about it a little bit now. It happened earlier this morning around 7:15 a.m. We had it live on our Facebook page. I wanted to bring it to you guys here. Pretty cool when we see NASA do stuff like this, so check it out.
Opening just below the payload fairing. And that strongback retracts back 1.5 degrees. And operators have confirmed that the TVC motions are good on our MVAC engine, the second stage engine. TVC being thrust vector control, how we position the engine and guide the stage into orbit.
3 minutes. Stage 1, LOX load close out.
And GNC verify stage 2, TVC motion nominal.
And we have finished loading liquid oxygen onto stage 1.
Strongback lower is ended, inclination 88.5 degrees.
And the strongback lower has also completed. at its 80.5-degree point right now.
Vehicle switching to internal power.
Now coming up in the final few minutes here, in the final 2 minutes, we will have the terminal count auto sequence in the final minute where the flight computer will enter into its startup mode. The final check of all our sensors across the vehicle will occur before we lead into startup. And you'll see the bright green flash at the base of the rocket where our T-tab will ignite and act as the starter for our 9 Merlin engines. Those 9 Merlin engines capable of putting out over 1.7 million pounds of thrust at sea level. And with that, we're going to go silent over here and let you listen into the final minute and a half of today's counts before on time T-0 at 7:15 a.m. Eastern Time.
Vehicles in self-align. Gas closeout started.
FTS announced FTS is ready for launch.
AFTS is ready for launch.
VC verify Falcon 9 is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Ground side gas closeout's complete.
LD verify go for launch.
Go for launch. Stage 2 pressing for flight.
T-minus 30. T-minus 20.
Stage 1 pressing for flight.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff of Falcon 9.
Copy, let's go.
Stage 1 propulsion is not.
So guys, if you're just joining us, what we know is that this all happened at 7:15 Eastern Time this morning. This is Cape Canaveral, Florida, and you just saw an inside look at the headquarters there. This is a U.S. classified intelligence mission for what they are launching. So not a lot of details there, but pretty cool footage, pretty awesome to see. Wanted to make sure I brought you this video. And they give us a little coverage too and a little background on what's all going on with the commentary. So it's pretty interesting to listen to.
Delivering the National Reconnaissance Office's satellite to orbit right now. We just transitioned through max Q, and we've begun chilling in the MVAC engine on our second stage. Trajectory is looking good so far. Coming up in about 20 seconds, we'll have main engine cutoff, MECO 1. That's where all 9 Merlin engines of that first stage will shut down, and we'll see stage separation. Stage separation will be actuated by 4 pneumatic actuators on the first stage.
We have MECO.
And we have main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
And stage separation has been confirmed. And you can see the first stage there flipping back. Use the nitrogen thrusters. And
S1 boost back burn.
And the boost back burn of that first stage. This boost back burn will last about another 15 seconds. We use this to reorient the stage back to Cape Canaveral and fly it back from all the forward velocity it had over the Atlantic Ocean. And we also had a successful fairing separation of the second stage. As we mentioned previously, we will not be covering the remainder of the primary mission due to the nature of the classified payload on board, but we are covering our first stage as it's making a landing attempt back at landing zone 1, and that's what you're seeing on your screen right now. On the right side is an onboard camera looking down from our interstage. That stage itself is 12 feet in diameter and over 100 feet tall, so you're looking down the length of that stage, and those grid fins also deployed, those grid fins guiding us back through Earth's atmosphere. On the left side of the screen, you're seeing our assets on ground tracking that rocket, the first stage as it's making its way back. Now that boost back burn was a 3-engine burn. Coming up, we're going to have our entry burn, also a 3-engine burn. The entry burn will happen just after the 7-minute mark. The first stage has passed its apogee. It was over 130 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. Those white puffs you're seeing are those nitrogen thrusters on board, which we also use for controlling the vehicle and a guided descent back to landing zone 1. Entry burn should be coming up in about a minute from now. You'll see 3 engines ignite at the base of the rocket. We use that to slow down all of the vertical velocity as the rocket is now falling back to the Earth's surface and accelerating. If you're just tuning in, we're watching the first stage as it's falling back to Earth and a guided descent back to landing zone 1. We have an entry burn coming up in about 15 seconds. 3-engine entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And we've entered the entry burn startup. And we have ignition of the entry burn. This is a 25-second burn.
Shut down.
And we have shutdown for the first stage. In about 45 seconds, we'll have our landing burn begin. That landing burn will last for about 30 seconds. And then we'll have touchdown of the vehicle.
AFTS has the
That landing burn is going to take us from going about 1,000 kilometers an hour right down to 0 on the surface of Earth. Landing legs will deploy about
Stage
10
one is
seconds
transonic.
before landing. Stage 1 just passed through transonic regime.
Landing burn startup.
And landing burn has hit startup, and we have ignition. See the landing legs deploy in a few seconds.
Late deploy.
And we have touchdown. First stage has landed back at landing zone 1. It's another good day for us at SpaceX. It's a beautiful sight to see. That is the 4th landing of a Falcon 9 at landing zone 1. And with that landing, that's going to conclude our coverage for today's webcast. It is a beautiful sight, certainly, to bring back another first stage. We will be putting that rocket through some inspections and then getting it ready for another launch for a future mission coming up in our very busy manifest for the remainder of the year. So with that, we'd like to thank the National Reconnaissance Office, the range, the FAA, as well as you, the viewer, for tuning in and watching us. If you'd like to keep track of our future missions as well as the progress of this mission, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or check out SpaceX.com. And if you'd like to come up here and join the team and be part of the crew that makes all this happen, check out SpaceX.com/careers. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you again soon.
All right, guys, we're back in the studio here. I'm going to bring you now to, that was pretty cool. I hope you enjoyed it. We had that earlier on our Facebook, so I wanted to make sure I brought you that awesome rocket launch. Again, U.S. classified intelligence kind of matters in that, so they didn't really talk about exactly more detail about that rocket launch. But, right, that was out of Cape Canaveral, Florida. We're going to go over now to San Francisco, or Oakland, rather, right across the bridge, where our sister station has footage of the protests going on there. Again, activists are gathering. It's May Day across the nation. Lots of protests demanding to end ICE, or immigrant collaboration. And 4 people have been arrested in Oakland. So check out this footage right here. This is live and raw out of Oakland, California.
So we need the board of supervisors and the sheriffs to select an alternative to jail to respond
They were happy. If you guys joined us earlier, you saw Ronica Cleary in this seat next to me here in the studio talking about her experience this weekend at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but she is also now en route towards the White House. Today there is a march in Washington called Stop the Deportations March, and people are marching, protesters are marching from DuPont Circle down to the White House. She'll be right there to get some live footage of that and perhaps talk to some people that are involved. And she'll have more on that story in our evening broadcast. This is pictures of from our sister KTVU Fox 2 in Oakland, protesters there outside of a government building. Apparently 4 have been arrested already. I don't have many more details on that, but you're looking at a picture of a government building, administration building in Oakland.
We'll make the violence stop. So stop it like it's hot. Rolling down our block. We'll make the violence stop. So stop it like it's hot. We don't want to stop. Rolling down our block. We'll make the violence stop. So stop it like it's hot. Rolling down our block. We'll make the violence stop. Like it's hot. We don't want to stop. Rolling down our block. We'll make the violence stop. So drop it like it's hot. We don't want to stop. Rolling down our block. We'll make the violence stop. So drop it like it's hot. We don't want to stop. Rolling down our block. We'll make the violence stop.
Going down for the third time, and your response is, we need to do a mystery campaign. Going down for the third time, so we're in the team late. So, I don't know. And it was
So next we're gonna have Alejandra from Kurt. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Alejandra Mojica. I'm representing Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, also known as CURE. Day 1 of a part of week-long Love, Rage, and Resistance. We're doing actions and events.
I'm just going to give you guys a little split screen here. In the upper left-hand corner, you see Oakland, what you're watching now, and with the Chiron on the bottom. In the lower right-hand corner, that's New York City, Union Square in Manhattan, also having a similar look of a protest for May Day. And yeah, take a look at these 2 live pictures coming at you today. Lots of people gathering to protest workers' rights and immigration rights, and in DC, it's a stop deportation protest that hopefully we will have footage for you as well.
Our collective oppression that we all face together. Right now, as Courage, we're calling for solidarity across all communities. Yes. We understand that one of our communities is under attack. All of our communities are under attack. Yes. And so right now, under the Trump administration, under the ICE raids, under education, under all these things that we're facing out here, is we're calling right now for solidarity across all of our communities. And for those of you who are newer to the Bay, so you should still know this, the Bay Area has always been sanctuary for folks. The Bay, Frisco, Oakland, all these
besides police brutality,
has always been a refugee space for artists and for those who are most marginalized. And as we become
become more and more gentrified, we're losing that. We're losing that ability to hold down the space. And so today and all week and every day, we're really calling for that solidarity across our communities, but also to hold it down and expand that definition and sanctuary expand to everybody. Those who are most marginalized, migrants, people of color, those who are targeted by the police, those who are gentrified, we all claim a sanctuary city for all of us. So, yeah, this piece is really about reclaiming our culture as a form of resistance. Los días de ayer ya se fueron. Es hora de crear un mundo nuevo. From street wars to street floors, this is how poverty lives. So contagious it gets passed down to your kids. Cycles of terrorism. Isn't the threat across seas? It's a threat against our freedom in our own country. Backwards nation where freedom of speech has a cost and poverty is a genocidal holocaust because ghettos were created for affordable housing. They're a place where you're trapped till you die. Brutal homicide. This corrupt system got us battling each other like gladiators from stadium pits to prison yards. But they don't teach us that our ancestors were warriors, depicting us like savages and street gangs were once village tribes fighting against these lies. So this week we the word alive. Spitting rhymes like elders tell stories through wisdom and creativity, building classrooms of divine teachings, information you can't get from mainstream radio stations with cartoon cycles of hating, turning that shit off from my rabbits making. Not just in those sheets, but in these streets where too many youngsters get blasted. Where's the compassion? Like we stay lacking, too caught up in paper stacking. And I understand supply and demand, because minimum wage still can't feed the fam. Grab a young boy's hand, teach him how to be a man, and help him understand the beauty of his homeland, deeply rooted in the spirit. This is the information you need to be hearing. But why when I talk, you're not listening? And baby girl, don't you know that you are beautiful? Not because you look like magazines, it's because you ain't scared to be free. A woman's beauty is her individuality, so how do we break free and plant new seeds in each new generation of humanity? We got reasons to be angry. These days got my heart aching. Our cultures are constantly facing extinction. Money distorts your thinking. Bullets flying, all this crying ain't necessary. There's other ways we could be living. But this I'll never stop writing. My trails left in pages, my stories told on stages. I need y'all to help me relay this, especially to those with innocence. Find the beauty in life and teach it, learn the roots and reverse it. Our identities lie in our histories, so go discover yourself and trust it will help to resist the temptations of oppression so we don't have to
might or might not
live like
about
this.
to arrest up there if you want to.
I don't want to live like this. Ain't y'all tired of living like this? Solidarity, we must resist, and continue to resist in solidarity, y'all. We must resist. Sigue luchando, mi gente.
Fuck you!
Alright, y'all, show some love for one of our young Holy for Justice interns. Michaela's about to get on the mic. Show her some love.
Well, I just like to remind people that most of these sheriffs and police are white, and they're the real immigrants. Like, last time I checked, this is native land that was stolen. Also that, like, the original police were, like, slave patrollers, and that this...
All right, guys, looks like we had a little bit of internet issue and streaming issue with that video, but that was live, raw video out of Oakland, California. So viewer discretion is advised for listening to that. It is unedited. I'm going to go over now to Vice President Pence. He's speaking currently. It is Small Business Week, actually. So he's speaking about the creation of American jobs and the economy. Let's go over to the Vice President.
Burden community banks and spur growth. The Choice Act is a common sense bill.
that repeals Dodd-Frank and empowers consumers and businesses, not bureaucrats and lawyers. Our administration will continue to work with Chairman Hensarling and the rest of Congress on this vital issue. I promise you that. We're already making some progress, and I promise you, with President Trump in the Oval Office, we're going to get the job done and unleash the boundless potential of the American economy with our community and independent banks helping to drive that recovery. This is absolutely one of the President's top priorities, and he wanted me to come out here today and make sure and share the substance of that with all of you. And I just would say it, you know, as I close, that it's a joy to see all of you. Some of you remember me back in the day when I was a member of Congress fighting against Dodd-Frank. You can imagine how humbling it is for me to be standing before you today here at the White House as Vice President to a President who understands the American economy and is going to take America back in the direction of the policies that will ensure a boundless economic future. It's incredible. And you all have been a part of it. You've been a part of continuing to make this case and carrying this case forward to the American people, and we're all grateful. But I just want to encourage you. I do believe your buttons are right. America loves community banks. In small-town America and medium-sized cities all across America, you're the difference makers. You're the folks that don't so much look at a balance sheet, but you look people in the face. Because it's not a matter of seeing forms filled out. It's a matter of people that you know. You see them walking up and down the street. You see them at places of worship. You see them at ball games. Each and every day you make decisions not so much by running a calculator, but by calculating in your heart who that person is and the character of the men and women that are building the enterprises of your communities. My dad's gone now about 30 years. My dad ran a small business, a gas station business in a small town, but I know how he spoke about our local bankers and the ability that they gave him and his company the opportunity to grow. You do that. In a very real sense, our community banks make dreams come true every day for working families, for small businesses. And I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, we have a president who knows that too. We have a president who has lived the American dream. And we have a president who understands the vital role that our community banks play in ensuring that every American has a chance to live that dream as well. So with that, I'll step off the stage, and the next voice you hear will be the President of the United States of America. So stay tuned.
I'm so shaky, I have to find them.
All right, guys, if you're just joining us, we're waiting the president next. You just heard from Vice President Mike Pence speak about the economy and creating jobs. It is Small Business Week, so there are likely to be events of this nature throughout the week that the president and vice president will speak at. It looks like we are awaiting him next, so stay tuned for this. All right, while we're waiting for the president, I'm going to bring you back over to New York City, where protests are ongoing. Check it out in Union Square, Manhattan. Part of May Day activism protests, anti-deportation, or pro-immigrant right activist protests across the country today. This is just some of the raw footage that we have from our sister station in New York. Check it out.
Okay.
Continuing the long-standing legacy of U.S. imperialism and the fascist tendencies of the Trump administration will always continue to heighten the contradictions that are inherent in capitalist society. And this is creating the right conditions to organize. So friends, we must remember that we are here in Union Square against ready to march, and that we are marching in faith with the hundreds and thousands of workers in the Philippines that are fighting for liberation, who are fighting against capitalization and displacement. We are marching in faith with the workers who are striking across the United States, fighting for a living wage and a life with dignity. We must continue to broaden our alliances, unite, and we must look beyond what the left looks like right now, and to go into the community and really empower our people to assert the right to stay, assert the right to move, assert the right to return, and assert the right to resist and defend their communities by any means necessary. The people united!
So guys, while we watch this rally and await the president speaking on Small Business Week, I want to show you an ad that the White House actually released this weekend about Trump and his first 100 days, the 100 days campaign, about his first 100 days in office. Just a quick little 30-second campaign ad.
Donald Trump, sworn in as president 100 days ago. America has rarely seen such success. A respected Supreme Court justice confirmed. Companies investing in American jobs again. America becoming more energy independent. Regulations that kill American jobs eliminated. The biggest tax cut plan in history. You wouldn't know it from watching the news. America is winning, and President Trump is making America great again.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Donald Trump, sworn in.
That was the campaign ad that was put out this weekend. We put that out this morning. It was also on our morning show. Just a quick 30-second ad just to sort of sum up the first 100 days. Just wanted to show you that while we wait some more live and breaking events coming out of D.C. This is still New York. You guys are watching the protests in Union Square, Manhattan. You can see some of the signs here, some of the people talking about the same stuff we've been talking about, ending deportation, immigration, the same type of stuff that is going to go on here in D.C. today as they march from DuPont Circle down to the White House. We will be sure to get more information on that and have, hopefully, a reporter down there will have some interviews and get some people who are involved in that, all happening later this afternoon around 4 o'clock in Washington.
Somewhere I may have tons of jobs, but that's how we make it. But then when you look at the history of the United States, these United States have been filled with people coming from all over the world, working countless amounts of jobs forever. What you're about to see is an excerpt from a production called Welcome to America, a Caribbean musical. And it focuses primarily on the hardship of an immigrant, a non-documented woman. Because sometimes the hardships are played out in the worst way on the bodies, on the female backs. Right? So, I just want to introduce Rachel Washington and Raphael Nadal. So give us a little excerpt from our production. And this is not necessarily about making you feel good, but it is reality. Because the people united can what? Never be defeated. Please help me welcome my actors. And I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
What's up?
All right, we're gonna start this scene for y'all. Glad to see your face, honey. Are there anything staying out of my life forever?
You must think I was born yesterday. For what I'm going to do,
Guys, a little bit of a different scene in San Francisco. They're also having a May Day rally. I'm going to show you some live footage of that. This is San Francisco Immigration May Day Rally 2017. Here it is.
Has been fighting against deportation machine over the last year.
It's good. You look at it? Yeah, it's off to the side a little bit. It's canceled just a little bit, but it looks fine. Can you see it? Can we get you again in 10 minutes? We'll be on the east side, right?
All right, we're going to go back to New York. It looks like our camera guy is setting it down there for a bit in San Francisco. But if that comes back, we want to show you the two together to sort of juxtapose the two different scenes that we're getting live. These midday rallies to protest immigration and stopping deportation as well. So this is back to New York City here, Union Square, Manhattan. You can see people with their signs gathering. Looks like it could be just any other protest that we usually see, but it seems to be a little bit bigger, and the crowd just gathering here, chalk on the streets. And another one, of course, another big one planned for Washington later this afternoon. So we'll see more of that tonight when our reporters get more of a scoop on that march from DuPont Circle down to the White House. Another May Day rally, immigration rally for May Day 2017.
Your memory sucks. You're never any peace for the mistake. You better back off. You may know I'm undocumented, but I'm quite a bit about you. Let it go. I won't speak rape, murder, or anything else until the cops get here.
One phone when you ask back on or they just make people when it went home.
Seems like it was a while ago. They said 3 minutes.
I think they took it just to near them that was
What is it, 12:45? Yeah.
How many times have you guys come to my place of work?
I'll do whatever I can while I'm matter of fact, I need a place to track. No. For a week. No, it's not negotiable. It's a matter of business.
What? You know I have a roommate. Come on.
That little boy.
Thank you.
You know what gets me about you? You were born here in the world. You've never been my dreams so much that you're willing to pour souls in this piece of rock. Like, you can't even get it together on. You should feel like crap looking at yourself.
And they're rolling on it still?
And it's so magic to hold down more job than your ass ever had. And don't you dare bring up the plight of a black man in America to me, because it's brothers like you who make them look bad. Period.
I'll be back in peace. And you'll be sorry you said that.
At a time like
First I've seen on like social media and stuff that you're like Marshall, you know, whatever.
my world without bliss, I could be sitting under a tree, listening to the wind as it rustles through the leaves. Now my heart is ruined, wondering what more to do. Why don't I pack up and go? Take the next flight out. No one would need to know. Well, this dream's now in doubt. I'm so alone, tired, nothing more to moan. Expired, my choices haunt. They follow me everywhere I go. Just to be free, wondering what more to do. I seem to have lost my way, trying to fit in. I don't recognize the girl I see. But schemes and plans have all gone wrong, and now
A little bit of technical difficulties here with that feed. Let us know what you think in the comments. Of course, you can always chat with us on our YouTube stream. We want to hear what you have to say and what you think of some of the events today. Lots of protests going on across the country. We're just trying to stream those videos to you so you can kind of see what it looks like across the different angles in the East Coast and the West Coast and everywhere. Now, coming up at 1:30, we're going to try to bring this press conference to you. If you remember, I don't know if you guys were watching on Friday, there was a case of an escaped prisoner who escaped from a van that in police custody, and he was sentenced to more than 100 years in prison for attempted murder of police officers. Now, he is still on the run, and Howard County Police has now given over this investigation to U.S. Marshals, and they're offering a $10,000 reward. I believe that's up from where it was at $5,000. So a lot of new information coming out about that case. This guy, we believe, is still on the run, and we're efforting more information on this. But police will have a press conference at 1:30 in Howard County. It's going to be held in Ellicott City, Maryland, with more information on that. So if we have that live for you at that time, if we're up, we will bring that to you live. So more information on that case that we were bringing to you on Friday. That was a breaking news situation out of Howard County. We're going to bring you back to a live shot of the Capitol Dome. Here it is right here on this sort of hazy, foggy day. Pretty warm out there already, and we're looking at possible extreme weather later in the afternoon, possible some tornado warnings and whatnot. So take a look at that, just Washington, D.C. live look, and we'll be back with you shortly.
question. I've definitely come together with my brothers and my family so much.
Check
better.
out this story.
Brothers,
It's happening live now. A 16-year-old, this is in the Detroit area, stopped to help victims of a car crash on Sunday morning and got hit in the process. He was struck by another driver. And now this is a live video right now. He's speaking out about that injury, on his recovery, and what happened during the crash. He actually is a track star, a teenage track star in Detroit. He lost a foot in the accident. So this Good Samaritan, 16-year-old teen track star who stopped to help a car full, I believe 6 people were victims of this car crash, and he was injured in the process. Check it out.
Could die today. Someone will die today. So the fact that I'm alive is amazing.
Dad?
How this has changed us as a family?
How are you different?
I'm older. I'm probably more tired than I've ever been in my life. I thought finals were bad in college. This has been, a 4-week challenge for us. But I mean, our family was close probably before this ever happened, and that's the strength that we're relying on to get through this. Even the extended family, our aunts, uncles, nephews. It's been a tough 4 weeks. But the outpouring of support, never would I have envisioned this, never. But and as a parent, you think you know your child's circle of friends. I didn't realize his circle was this large. We heard within the first week from as far away as China, Indonesia, well-wishers sending just words of encouragement. So, it's tough. As a parent, you never want to live through something like this. You never want to experience something like this. And having gone through this, it's strengthened the family bond, I think, across the board.
What would you want people, the outside world, to take away from this? I know your dad mentioned something that I think was interesting, do something extraordinary for somebody, and that's what you did. What would you like people to take away from your experience?
From my experience, anything you can take away with it helps, but definitely trying to help as many people and not knowing the circumstances that everyone else is dealing with, and because not only did we help someone on the side of the road, of course, but I mean that could go as far as helping someone in the classroom, helping someone just anywhere. So it's kind of, you don't know what people are dealing with, so it's always easier to help. So if people can take away that, if not, this experience has been really hard. So it's, like I said earlier, there's always someone else doing well worse than you are. So that's another thing I would like people to take away, because people could complain about, I don't know, some stupid problem, maybe their internet going out, but I mean, there's people smiling that don't have any legs or arms. So it's interesting to just think that way and to actually perceive things in a different way.
Did you feel that way before, though?
When my internet would go out? Because definitely, yeah.
Sorry. Did you feel that way before, though?
To a certain extent, but this, I mean, not everyone has this life-changing event that I did, but what I can say is I don't want anyone to have this life-changing event, obviously, but I can say what I've learned from this life-changing event is this, that there's someone else doing worse than you. So I hope people can learn from that and actually think, like, okay, things are going to be okay, or am I really complaining about this, or is this actually necessary type thing. So I don't know, that's just what I've learned, so I hope people can take away that. You're welcome.
So thank you everybody for coming. This will be the last interview that they do, so they've asked for privacy going forward. So if you have any follow-up questions, you can just email me or Tammy, whose contact info you have, and we can go from there. So,
is there anything that you wanted to say but we just didn't ask, and you're like, darn, I wish they'd asked that?
Purdue.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Boiler up.
Purdue. I thought someone was going to ask a question about, so how'd they do against Michigan, but no, We will say we are a huge Purdue family, and sometimes when we don't win, we get a little bit mad. And a lot of my friends at school know that I'm a Purdue fan, so it's hard to be a Purdue fan, but sticking with it shows a lot of effort right there. So
Boiler up.
yeah.
To further that too, Purdue was a consideration of ours, and we were hoping to get a athletic scholarship. It's probably not out of reach, but it's at least still on the radar. The backup plan was to go through the ROTC program at Purdue University, and I don't believe we could meet the qualifications now. So we're still Purdue fans and always will be, but for him, we may have to go to the second choices that we've had. So
we'll see. Don't know that, though.
We don't.
Yeah, you don't know what technology.
We don't. You're right.
Don't drop it up.
It's a dream school of mine, but I don't know. We'll see. We still got some things to work on, and I got to figure out this before I can figure out college and stuff like that.
No, we didn't ask about that. What do you aspire to do in the future? Do you think about that? I know you're only a junior.
Yeah. Well, there's been so many things in my head. ROTC was always an option. A lot of family members and a lot of
engineering's always an option too.
Engineering's not an option.
No.
We'll cut that out officially.
My
it's
bad.
Not an option.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always thought about going into management or sports management because I love sports and I'm a sports fan.
So it puts a lot in perspective here. A 16-year-old track star who was injured in a crash when he was trying to help a carload of 6 people in a van that crashed. This was in the Detroit area. This is a press conference happening live. They're talking to him. Apparently he lost a foot in the accident. Really scary stuff. Definitely puts it in perspective for what Good Samaritanship shows and where he'll go next after having sort of a legacy of stardom in his in track, and now this injury. You can see his foot raised here at the table, speaking with his family. On the last interview they said that he'll do, but also in Detroit earlier, just moments ago, there was a police officer update on a situation that happened over the weekend where a police officer was shot in the head when he was responding to a domestic violence or domestic dispute call situation and call in Detroit. The officer was shot in the head, critical condition, and then 2 officers came back and shot the suspect and killed the suspect in that situation. I'm going to bring you to this press conference where the police recount the incident and what had happened and how the police officer who was shot is doing.
Unfortunately, they could not gain entry into this. And I'm going to have to kind of describe it's an apartment building over on the 10,000 block of Joy Road, multi-unit apartment building. The only way to gain access is through a main door. That door was locked. However, the person reporting indicated that they would prop the door open so that when the officers arrived, they could gain access. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and our investigators are estimating that the officers knocked, kicked a number of times on the door trying to gain entry, unsuccessfully. At some point, a suspect who resided in the building in an apartment not associated with the apartment of the domestic violence incident, we know left his apartment building or his apartment armed with a weapon. We have information through our investigation that as he left his apartment building with a gun, he was actually chambering a round in his weapon. It was a .380 nickel-plated pistol. He then left the apartment with the gun in an extended manner, going down a stairway. As he approached the front door that was locked, he opened the door with the gun extended. The officer, the one who was struck by gunfire, was the first one that encountered the suspect. His arm was extended, and the officers responded. The officer that was shot fired several rounds from his department weapon, and simultaneously both the officer and the suspect fell to the ground. At that point, the junior officer, with 6 months out of the academy, who had a position of cover, responded to the threat, fired a number of rounds from his department-issued weapon. immobilizing the suspect. After that, the officer pulled his partner, what he felt out of harm's way, into safety. We know that he dragged his partner for several feet, and about that time, EMS was on scene. Now, EMS was notified just as the officers were arriving because of the assault and battery. And so you could see EMS arriving on the scene. They transported the officer here where he's been treated. I would just say this is once again, a sobering reminder of the dangers that our officers face each and every day. I think it was just last week during a news report, I talked about the dangers of handling domestic violence calls, the dangers of traffic stops. But again, I want to stress that based on what we know in our investigation right now, this suspect was not connected to the domestic violence incident. The only connection was he resided in the apartment building. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our mayor for some comments, and then I think you will hear from the surgeon who will talk in more detail about his medical condition. Mr. Mayor?
So once again, we're reminded that every citizen of the city of Detroit owes an enormous debt of gratitude to the 2,500 men and women of the Detroit Police Department. The handling of this matter by Officer Johnson and his partners, by all account, was textbook perfect. You have incidents in other cities in this country where you have officer-citizen involved issues in which there's a lot of criticism of what the officers have done. It seems like in every case where we've had an officer injured or killed, and the chief and the department go back and review it, our officers are conducting themselves with outstanding professionalism. And the randomness of this, if you imagine the pressure on the police, it appears that the person who was the reason for the domestic violence call in the first place had already left the building, and a random person in the building comes out with a gun pulled on officers that weren't expecting it, and they responded professionally and appropriately. The surgery team here at Oakwood has been doing everything they can. I guess it's Beaumont Oakwood now, and have accommodated the family. The chief and I just met with the family. The chief was here a good part of the night with the family, and we let them know that the thoughts and prayers of everybody in Detroit are with Officer Johnson, and the trauma surgeon will give you a more accurate statement of his condition, but it is critical, and he needs our prayers. And with that, I'll turn it back to the chief.
Thank you. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Wagner, who will talk a bit about our officer's condition.
Good afternoon. As you're aware, the officer that was brought to us was severely injured. Through the late morning today, he has deteriorated somewhat. At this point, it appears that he'll require another operation. The injuries themselves were obviously very devastating. We are obviously going to do everything we can to help save this gentleman's life and return him to his recovery as best we can.
Okay, I guess at this point we'll open it for any questions you might have.
I would like to get a clarification. It's difficult to hear in here, but the gentleman who did the shooting, or the person who did the shooting, he opened or he answered the door with the weapon in his hand. Did I hear that correctly?
He did open the door. Certainly he was armed, and we believe that he was prepared to shoot anybody who was at that front door. Now, we can't say definitively that he responded with his weapon because he was agitated. I will tell you it appeared that his gait leaving his apartment was somewhat unsteady, so I can't say that he was under the influence or whether or not he was even agitated or whether or not he knew it was Detroit police. I will tell you that both police officers were in their uniform, and they responded to the location in a marked scout car. So it was clear that the police were at the location.
Was it a 25 caliber?
It was a .380 caliber nickel-plated pistol, unknown make.
You said that the shooters, you talked about his gait. Is this all seen on body cam? Is that...
No body cam. We have access to video, and I had a chance to view it. And so I'm aware of what took place prior to. In fact, like I said, he left his apartment building, descending down the stairs, armed with the nickel-plated pistol. But as he left the apartment, you can see him chambering around at that point.
Chief, do you know if that gun is registered to that individual?
I don't have that information. In fact, we did serve a search warrant at the location. We recovered 2 additional weapons, a .45 caliber pistol, as well as a shotgun. The mayor touched on it in his remarks about textbook. I will tell you that in addition to both officers being heroic, presence of mind, their approach to this was textbook, tactically sound. I had a chance to look at this in a very critical way, but our officer who's out of the academy just 6 months performed in an outstanding manner.
Chief, can you talk about the fact that we are here too often outside of finite race?
It's just a sobering reminder of the dangers that our officers face each and every day. We're fortunate here, as the mayor talked about, we have a very supportive community here in Detroit, but the reality is that there are those in the community that are violent, whether it's against a citizen, against our police officers. And while there have been a number of shooting incidents, I think the thing that strikes me, and I've talked to my staff over the last 10 to 12 hours, is that here we are, once again, as you pointed out, since September of last year, we've had 9 incidents where an officer was either shot or murdered. And so it's very serious. And this is not including incidents where officers were ambushed, where someone knew that the police were in the area and decided to act aggressively. And I think it goes back to the time of Captain Style.
Yes, if I could, when you think about the pressure that these officers are under, and you think about the number of times we've been in this, there's no pattern to it. I mean, we had 3 officers shot by the same individual, the man who Officer Rose. We had Officer Jarrett killed by a driver under the influence on a routine traffic stop. We had 2 officers shot in a case in which it appears the person in the house thought they were burglars. We had Captain Style, who was trying to arrest a suspect who knew to be potentially armed and dangerous. And then we have what appears to be a random attack on an unrelated stop. And if you think about the job our police officers are doing, it is not that there has been any pattern to this. It can be the most routine or the most dangerous of circumstances. They have to be prepared at all times. And you look back in each one of these cases, and in each case, our officers handled it absolutely professionally and appropriately.
Chief, can you talk about the officer? Tell us a little bit about him.
14-year veteran, certainly has a good career, enjoys his job. In fact, I had a chance to speak with his stepfather, who is also a former Detroit police officer that I learned he retired 22 years ago. And he went to his stepfather and asked, I want to be a police officer. And so certainly, it kind of reminds me of my story with my dad, who was a police reserve and served in the U.S. military as a military police officer. Asked his dad, and his dad certainly. His son enjoyed this job each and every day. Looked forward to going out and serving the citizens of this city.
So the officer's official status is critical right now?
Again, critical, but again, if the doctor
he's
wants.
critical at this point.
And are you able to say how many times he was struck?
We can't say with certainty, but it appears at this point just once.
Can you say where?
He was struck in the head, just to be specific. Appears that it may have been in the forehead area.
Chief, can you talk about, you said thank you, Doctor. You said that the woman, when initially, was she the initial caller, the woman?
Yes, she was.
She had left the premises, was she still there?
She did not. Our investigators had a conversation with her after the fact. However, the male who was involved in this dispute left the location prior to police arrival.
So she was still at the location?
Yeah, so we're still trying to locate the other disputant to probably get some insights into what happened, because we're still trying to figure it out.
And there's no relationship that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Chief, can you talk a little bit about the relationship between the community and the police department, the efforts to bridge gaps that might prevent further incidents such as this?
Well, I think the mayor said it best. I mean, this is random. This is not orchestrated attacks on police officers. I think you know this. We've talked about this just a couple of weeks ago. We are the model for community policing in this country, and I can say that with a lot of confidence. And just this weekend, we did our DPD TV in the community, on the ground, talking to our community. We have our NPOs that are deployed throughout this city that foster great relationships. We do work with the youth. This has nothing to do with that. We need to focus on the fact that we have an officer who's fighting for his life, who served this community with distinction. That's the issue. Any more questions?
So guys, this was an earlier press conference from today regarding this officer who was shot in the head when responding to a domestic dispute incident in the Detroit area. I know we had some issues on sound earlier when we brought you this press conference, so I wanted to make sure we got it out there. But speaking of guns, there's more activity going on in a breaking situation out of Dallas right now. I'm going to bring you this tweet that we have. Check it out. Take myself out of here. The Dallas Police Association just tweeted this out about 15 minutes ago. There's an active shooter in Dallas. This time a fireman has been shot and officers are pinned down by gunfire. Please pray. This is a recent tweet that we got notice of, and the only initial info that I have right now from our sister station, KDFW down there, says that initial reports from a local scanner say that a Dallas Fire and Rescue staffer was shot while responding to a call. Dallas police are searching for a suspect, but no reports yet of anyone injured. I'm going to see if I can find some chopper video for you guys about this incident, but for now, this is the live breaking tweet. I'm going to see what we have coming out of Dallas and this breaking news.
That's just
So guys, this is the video that I have. It's a little bit rough coming from Dallas's feed of their chopper video dealing with an active shooter situation. You see the tweet right here in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. That's as much info as we have right now. When they give us some more follow-up information, we'll bring that to you. But you're looking at a chopper video here. You can see a bunch of police cars lining that street, a bridge right near the overpass here on the highway. This is southeast Dallas. And again, reports of an active shooter with a rifle in this location. Possible information and notes from the initial reports say that the suspect is a black male with a blue shirt and black jeans. Not a lot more information coming out of this. Also reading that this possibly started as a possible self-inflicted shooting. An initial report saying that, like I said, a Dallas fire and rescue staffer was shot when responding to a call. So this is the scene we have out of Dallas from the station down there, KDFW. Can't really tell from this video, not a lot of action happening, but you do see lots of police car presence and patrols and officers. Meanwhile, we have the White House press briefing coming up. And as we mentioned earlier, we had Ronica Cleary in here. She is at that briefing. She'll be there to cover it, the first one since after the weekend, after the White House press or White House Correspondents' Dinner that she attended. And we'll see what they have to say coming out of the press briefing today. But right here, this is the breaking situation that we have in Dallas. We'll be efforting some more information as we get it available to us. Quick live look at the White House press briefing room right here. This is Washington, D.C. You can hear a little bit of the bustle of the crowd there, all the journalists gathering together to get ready for Sean Spicer to come out and give his daily briefing. We'll get some more information on this later tonight in reports. And remember, there is still the May Day protest going on. So a stop deportation march is happening from DuPont Circle down to the White House. Later this afternoon, we'll be curious to see if there's any comment on that or on any of the May Day protests going on. It looks like it is shortly about to start, but we'll bring you back to the breaking situation out of Dallas. There's our aerial coverage, chopper video of this cross section here with police car presence dealing with an active shooter. That's what we know right now. I'm going to see if we have another update or a more updated tweet on the situation.
$0.160.160.72.
So no new information on this active shooter situation in Dallas, but you have a split screen here getting ready for the White House press briefing right below me here. And in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, the same aerial situation in Dallas, southeast Dallas, working on an active shooter situation there. Apparently, the suspect has had a rifle, and one Dallas fire and rescue staffer is down. We don't know too much more than that right now. So a little bit of new information, guys, coming out of the situation that you see in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. This is aerials of Dallas. Some more information from an article that we have here. A firefighter was shot while responding to a call in Southeast Dallas. They had early reports, Dallas time around 11:30 a.m., of a possibly suicidal man. That's what we were hearing initially in that area, armed with a rifle. And they did spot a man walking down the street with a rifle. This is down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. This is the cross-section in Dallas where this all happened. And then the tweet that we showed you earlier, the Dallas Police Association tweeted out that there is an active shooter situation there. Police are apparently still looking for this suspect. He's described as a black male, about 5'8", 200 pounds, who's bald and walks with a noticeable limp. And residents in the area are being asked to take cover. So a little bit of a scary situation there. It looks like our chopper is moving out, or perhaps more honing in more directly on a certain area here with the police presence. So it sounds like a possible suicidal situation turned dangerous for one Dallas fire and rescue staffer who was apparently pinned down. Some officers were pinned down by gunfire for a while. Police now looking for a man with a rifle in that area. Can't really tell too much from this coverage, but it is the video that we have right now from that situation in Dallas. This is all from our station down there, Fox 4 in Dallas. And meanwhile, we're getting ready for the White House press briefing. Top left-hand corner of your screen, we'll hear what Sean Spicer has to say about President Trump's events of the weekend and of the day. Today, we know that he was speaking on small businesses and the American economy, growing jobs, along with Vice President Pence. They were speaking for Small Business Week, which is an ongoing sort of celebration this week. We'll have to see if he also mentions some of the other White House events, possibly some fallout or from the White House Correspondents' Dinner, or just a summation of his rally in Pennsylvania, which occurred on Saturday night during that dinner. So we'll see what Sean Spicer has to say. This should be shortly coming up next. We'll take this full screen for you guys.
One 0 dot 1 3 3 dot 1 6 0 dot 7 2.
So guys, while we await the press briefing, we're still dealing with this active shooter situation down in the bottom right-hand corner. That is Dallas, Southeast Dallas, where police are on the hunt for a man with a rifle who did shoot a firefighter on duty there. And apparently the firefighter has been transported to a hospital for his injuries. But we don't know much more than that, other than they are on the search for a man who's described as a black male who is bald, potentially was suicidal, walking with this rifle in this area on this cross street. The chopper video isn't super clear. We're not super close in here, but we know that this is an ongoing situation in Southeast Dallas. Looks like the chopper may be rolling out here to another area, honing in on another chopper, but we'll bring you some more information if we have it. Otherwise, when Sean Spicer comes up, we'll bring you the White House press briefing of today, Monday.
But both distinctive hairstyles.
He has an Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to call you back. I'm sure this should be right out. Sure, I'll call you. All right, thanks, Glenn.
The only tweet that we've seen from the Dallas Police Association is the one you see right here, that there was another active shooter in Dallas. This time a fireman has been shot. Officers are pinned down by gunfire. That's the only thing we've seen. No new updates from that Twitter account. But you can see when I do a little switch here that the chopper video is still up and running. Not super clear, not super close either, but you see a couple police officers there, the lights, a bunch of cars kind of pinned there together, where Dallas Fire and Rescue personnel were responding to a call in Southeast Dallas when one fireman was shot. He has been transported to the hospital for his surgery, rushed to a local hospital, but we don't know much more than that. That is the breaking situation out of Dallas. We'll bring you some more when we have it, but you will also be seeing right below me here the White House press briefing room. Sean Spicer about to come up to talk about another day in the life in the White House, another summary of President Trump's events, how the weekend went, and what they're working on for this week. It's Small Business Week, so we heard from President Trump earlier just a few brief remarks along with the Vice President about jobs and the American economy and their mission to boost it and how they're going to create those jobs. So Sean Spicer is sure to bring that up at the beginning here of his briefing today. But that is coming up shortly, live here in Washington, D.C. And at the bottom of your screen, you're looking at a live shot of Dallas, Texas, where a fireman has been shot. So they continue to look for the suspect in Dallas, a man armed with a rifle on the streets of Dallas. Take a look at a live shot of the White House and the outside of the White House here. We'll be going inside next. You'll see this here, inside that White House press briefing room for the briefing.
Unicorns and rainbows and I'm like, holy moly. The page on our book just makes it slow down.
a little bit of a closer look right here, as clear as we can get it, of this chopper video in southeast Dallas. It seems there is either a standoff or some type of, we know there's an active shooter situation, but we don't know exactly what's happening in this picture. We do know one fireman has been transported to the hospital for surgery, so they were able to get him out of there when he shot, after he shot this officer, or this fireman rather. But we don't know sort of what is going on with all these police cars here and what the active situation really looks like. I'm continuing to read some updates, so I'll bring those to you if we have any more information. But we know that officers spotted a man with a rifle just walking down the street here in Dallas, and looks like they've cordoned off this area. A bunch of officers standing by their cars. Residents have been asked to take cover. We do know that. So it looks like a pretty residential area. You can see the police cars kind of line the whole street going up to the left-hand corner of your screen. And they're still looking for the suspect, described as a black male, 5'8". Not too much more information on this situation in Dallas, but it is a breaking situation, so they're still dealing with the active shooter situation here. We'll bring you more as we have it. I'm going to bring you back to this double screen shot, the White House press briefing about to start here in Washington.
I'll call you right back.
Guys, I'm going to take you while we wait for the briefing and come out of the Dallas shot to a press conference going on now that I reminded you guys about the Howard County search for the escaped prisoner. Police are now holding this press conference live to update us on that search. Check it out.
Of David Watson, and no indications to us that he has remained in the immediate area. He's currently serving a sentence of more than 100 years at a correctional facility in Delaware, and facing charges in Wacomico County for attempted murder of law enforcement. And now he is also facing charges of escape and assault in Howard County related to this incident. Today, Howard County police officers are in the Jessup area, and they are going door to door to businesses, particularly those that may have been closed over the weekend and may have reopened today since it's Monday. They're handing out flyers to those businesses and asking for them to check their buildings, their property, any vehicles they may have at the property, and any video footage, surveillance of the interior or exterior of their buildings. We want them to be looking to see if it looks as if there's been a break-in, or if perhaps someone meeting the suspect's description has been spotted on video camera or elsewhere by one of their personnel. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Fox 45. The description of Watson is that he is a white male, 5 feet 8 inches tall and 150 pounds. He was last seen in the woods in the area of Dorsey Run Road wearing white clothing with no markings or emblems. We've confirmed that he did not have access to a weapon at the time of his escape because we know that the handguns for the correctional officers were in lockboxes inside the van. We have circulated many photos of his tattoos. He's got facial tattoos as well as the word evil on the back of his neck and the word sin on one of his hands. So we are asking for anyone who sees this escaped prisoner, this fugitive, to call 911 immediately. For people who may not have an immediate sighting of him, but can provide perhaps other information, the U.S. Marshal Service is asking for callers to use their tip line, which is 443-885-0923, or the email address car.ftf@maryland.gov. That's pretty much everything that we have at this point. I can take questions, but before I do, hey, Lori, do you want to just give me a hand with this?
Apologies here, guys, that our feed is a little bit rough. We're getting this from our live view camera. One of our reporters is there getting this information, this update on this escaped prisoner that they've handed over to the U.S. Marshals and increased the reward for finding David Watson from last week.
Turned up in the search for businesses. Is there surveillance video? Is there any pictures, anything like that of him from the area on the weekend?
Well, the canvassing started this morning, late this morning actually, with our officers going door to door. So we are still awaiting the results of what they may or may not find. And we're hoping that as those businesses perhaps roll through their video surveillance from over the weekend, maybe we'll get some good footage there as well.
Have there been reports of stolen vehicles or anything like that in the area?
So far, we've had no reports of break-ins to buildings or cars, no stolen vehicles, no reports of anything suspicious in the area.
Any theories at all? Hop a train, stow away on a tractor trailer out of Jessup? Anything? Any theories? Anything?
We've received no reports of sightings that have turned out to be valid. We've gotten tips, we followed up on those tips, and none of them have panned out. As far as the question about trains, our canine trail actually went through the woods, right over the line into Anne Arundel County. And there were train tracks nearby. So in an abundance of caution, we contacted CSX and we searched trains that had gone through that area, even though we learned that the trains were traveling over 50 miles per hour, which would make it difficult for anyone to get on board. We still conducted those searches. We interviewed the conductors and made sure that there were no indications that he had gotten onto a train.
What do the officers say? I mean, this is a guy who has nothing to lose. I mean, is it gotta be dangerous? I mean, what are the officers saying about what he may be?
This is someone who is a violent offender and has a history of attempted murder against law enforcement officers. So it is for us and for the community critical that we bring him into custody. And that's why our search is expanding, and that's why the U.S. Marshals have now become the lead agency.
Any more on the investigation in terms of whether or not he had this planned, if anybody is helping him? Do you guys think anybody is helping him at this time?
At this point, we have had no indication that this was planned or that anyone was assisting him, but we're still working to determine whether that's possible or if, in fact, this was a spontaneous, impulsive act and perhaps an incident of opportunity for him.
How far did that canine trail go?
The canine trail went through the woods just over the Anne Arundel County line in that area, at which point the trail was lost.
Logistically, 2 guards were with Watson inside of the vehicle? Is that right? Or?
It's our understanding that 2 guards from Wacomico County Detention Center were inside the van with Watson. They transported him, and when they opened the back door, he shoved one of the guards and fled.
And that's that assault charge?
Yes.
On Friday, you said you weren't certain whether or not he still had shackles on. Have you been able to determine that?
We are still working to determine whether or not he may have been wearing leg shackles at the time of the escape. The guards have indicated to us from Wacomico County that he was in handcuffs with a waist chain and leg shackles. We found handcuffs and the waist chain at the scene near the van. We did not locate leg shackles. We did locate, however, a pair of sweatpants that Watson discarded in the woods. If he had been wearing both leg shackles, restrained, he would not have been able to take off the sweatpants without tearing them. So we know at some point he either was able to discard them or at the very least take off one side, which enabled him to remove those sweatpants.
Sherry, on Friday also you talked about looking into ties that he may have to different areas. Have you been able to establish any ties that he may have had where he may try to go someplace else? Has any of that happened yet?
Well, we have been in touch with members of his family and people that we know he's been in contact with over time while he's been incarcerated. So far, none of those leads have panned out. We have no information that he's been in contact with anyone. Some of those contacts and family members are in Delaware. Some are in Wacomico County. But again, none that we've been able to determine that he's contacted.
You know what kind of clothes he had on under whatever the prison jumpsuit was that he had on? Did he have layers on under that?
It's my understanding that he was dressed in all white clothing and that there were layers of clothing. So while we did find a pair of sweatpants and a thermal shirt in the woods, we do think that he was wearing clothing underneath of those. So we don't know what he could be wearing now, but the last time we saw him, he was wearing all white. Okay, so I think that's all that we have for today. Hopefully we'll have good news sooner than later, and we'll continue to update you. Just keep your eye on social media, Twitter at HCPD News. Thank you.
So some interesting information coming out. I apologize for this rough feed, but this was the case that we were on in breaking news last Friday. You heard our reporter from Fox 5, Paul Wagner, who was just barely in the shot right now, asking a question about the leg shackles, and more details coming out about how David Watson actually escaped police custody. Really interesting stuff. This case is still ongoing, and they've turned it over to the U.S. Marshals, as she indicated. It's become a larger search. It could be even further than we know. And she even mentioned how they've been investigating if or not he could have grabbed onto a moving train to get himself sort of out of this general area as they continue their search, their very wide search for this prisoner who escaped police. Now, it's really interesting to hear about the white outfit that he was in, the sweatpants and the sweatshirt, and how he would have had to rip them to get them off if he did have the leg shackles on. So one might believe that he was able to get out of those shackles to run, especially because he hasn't been found yet. So it's a question now of sort of piecing it all together. We're going to have to just stay on this and the Howard County Police updated information. And as we have more, we'll bring that to you, and more, of course, with our report tonight. Paul Wagner is on this story all day. I'm going to bring you back to out of this rough video and back to Dallas. The White House press briefing has still not started. I'm going to see if we have any more updated information on the situation in Dallas, where a firefighter has been injured and taken to a local hospital. He was responding to an emergency call in Southeast Dallas. That's what you're seeing right here. And right now, they're looking for a man who was walking with a rifle down the street. It's possible that there's an ongoing sort of active shooter situation, or that he's on the run. We're not really sure right now, but we know that residents in the area have been asked to take cover, and that's the scene that you're looking at right now. This whole strip of police officers lining the street in Southeast Dallas. We are awaiting the White House press briefing over here. It's a live shot inside the White House. This should be starting up soon, and we'll get some updates from Sean Spicer.
Have you been up to anything today? It's so quiet.
Okay, we can start.
Right below me, guys, is the tweet that we saw earlier from Dallas Police Association. Now, we haven't seen another update on that. That's the only thing we've seen out right now. I'm looking for some more information on what is happening in this situation in Southeast Dallas. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. But police did tweet out there that there is another active shooter in Dallas, possibly referencing another recent situation that they've been dealing with. This time a fireman has been shot. Officers are pinned down by gunfire. Please pray. I'll be looking for some more information on this for you as we await the start of the White House press briefing with Sean Spicer. That's coming up next. can see, guys, reporters gearing up to their live shots in the White House press briefing room here. And then in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you're looking at aerials of the situation in Dallas. This is ongoing out of southeast Dallas. We don't have any new information for you. But if you remember about a week ago, the other incident that they were referring to, the police, when they tweeted this out, was the employee evacuation after a shooting in the Dallas office building where a man shot his boss and then shot himself. We didn't have a lot of information in the moment to bring to you on that, but I remember bringing you some live footage of that. We saw employees being evacuated, running from the building. One officer was injured and bleeding in that event. That was about a week ago or so. So another incident in Dallas, and this time a man with a rifle shooting a fireman staffer who was transported to the hospital, and now there's an ongoing police situation. You can see tons of police presence here, but that's what we remember from last week's situation. It was a tall glass office building, and a man walked in and shot his boss and then shot himself. Pretty scary situation on the 7th floor just about a week ago. So Dallas seeing another round of gun-related violence today. And that's what you're looking at in the right-hand corner of your screen. Right below me, we have the White House press briefing coming up next. Should be coming out shortly. Looks like there's some activity here. We'll take this next.
Hi, guys. I appreciate you having me. I hope you guys had a good weekend. It was definitely a busy one for the Trump administration. On Friday, the president signed several proclamations ahead of the start of the new month. Those are all available at whitehouse.gov. On Saturday, you may have not noticed, but it was the president's 100th day in office, for those of you not keeping count. The president took several significant steps towards leveling the playing field for American workers and businesses while visiting an Ames factory in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Ames has been making tools in America since before our country's founding. It's an example of the amazing persistence of the American spirit, the type of company that will be able to expand and create new jobs under the president's pro-growth economic agenda. He signed 2 executive orders at Ames that will help keep jobs and wealth in our country. The first fulfilled an executive order of a major campaign promise by directing the Secretary of Commerce to identify every violation and abuse of our trade agreements and to use every measure available under the law to end those abuses. And the second established the Office of Trade Manufacturing Policy, which will be led by Dr. Peter Navarro. This office replaces the National Trade Council and elevates it to a permanent office within the White House, sending an important signal to the world that the United States will no longer tolerate trade cheating while our manufacturing and defense industrial base suffers. He also signed a third executive order over the weekend establishing the American Technology Council, which will be led by Chris Liddell, which is dedicated to modernizing the federal government's information technology so that it works more efficiently and effectively for everyone. And he wrapped up the day speaking to thousands at a rally in Pennsylvania. This weekend, the president also engaged with some of our longtime allies in Southeast Asia who are on the front lines against the fight against ISIS and other forms of terror through calls with the president of the Philippines, the prime minister of Singapore, and the prime minister of Thailand. Today's a start of another big week here. After signing a proclamation on Law Day, he stopped by the Kennedy Garden, where around 100 members of the Independent Community Bankers of America kicked off their Capital Summit. Smaller banks are one of the driving forces behind economic investment and development in our communities, but they've been disproportionately harmed by the dramatic increase in regulation since 2008, declining in number by 30% since 2008. The president's pro-growth agenda, including instituting what he's called a 21st century Glass-Steagall, will allow these banks to spend less time complying with unnecessary requirements, many of which were designed to police much larger entities, and more time infusing their communities and local small businesses with capital. It's also the start of Small Business Week. Today, Ivanka Trump will be participating in a conversation at the United States Institute of Peace with SBA Administrator Linda McMahon. And the Vice President will deliver remarks at the National Small Business Week Awards program later this afternoon. Back to the President's schedule. After speaking with the community bankers members, the President had lunch with Vice President Pence, Secretary of State Tillerson, and Secretary of Defense Mattis, as well as National Security Advisor McMaster, before meeting separately with Secretary Tillerson. I also want to mention this morning that FEMA held a severe weather coordination call to discuss impacts on the remaining threat for continued severe weather across portions of the Southwest to the Mississippi Valley, which has already killed 5 people in Texas. Secretary of Homeland Security Kelly participated on the call, and the White House is in contact with local governments in these affected areas. We'll have those communities in our thoughts and prayers and encourage everyone to follow the directions of their state, tribal, and local officials to stay safe. Finally, let me run down what we're expecting for the President's schedule this week. Tomorrow, he'll present the Commander-in-Chief Trophy to the United States Air Force Academy. Wednesday, the President will host the President of the Palestinian Authority for an official visit. And on Thursday, he'll host a National Day of Prayer event. And as I mentioned last week, he will then attend an event commemorating the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Coral Sea aboard the USS Intrepid and meet with the Prime Minister of Australia. I'll continue to update you on the schedule throughout the week. And with that, your questions. Jill.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to go back to the comments that the President made this weekend on Face the Nation on healthcare regarding pre-existing conditions. And he has said specifically that the bill he wants to sign would, quote, mandate that pre-existing conditions be covered. Can you talk us through a little bit of what he meant there? Was he referring to something he wants to push to include in the bill? Was he talking about the language that's already in there?
Well, I think both, in the sense that the MacArthur-Meadows amendment ensures that pre-existing existing conditions are continued to be covered. But then obviously as this bill hopefully passes the House this week or whenever it does, and then goes through the Senate and the House, this is an issue that is important to him.
How does he ensure, though, that those people actually are treated affordably? I mean, there was an estimate from AARP that if you were looking just at the high-risk pools, the premiums could be as high as over $25,000 for somebody. What is he doing to ensure that doesn't happen?
So there's two things, and I think he mentioned in the same interview that, just to be clear, right now under Obamacare, as it collapses on its own weight, people who have pre-existing conditions are really the most vulnerable, because if you have an insurance system that no longer is able to provide care to those who need it, then I think we've talked about this before, you have a card without coverage. So what the President is doing is ensuring going forward, as we attempt to repeal it and replace it, that coverage of pre-existing conditions is at the core of that. So that is something that he has ensured is in the current bill and will continue to push for, to make sure that coming out of the Senate and going to conference is there as well. John.
A couple things for you, Sean, if I could. First of all, what do you say to conservatives who feel like they didn't get a whole lot out of this spending bill? There was no money for the wall, no cuts to sanctuary cities, funding for Planned Parenthood was maintained. What do you say to those conservatives?
Let's take them in order. But I think the President got a lot out of this bill, most specifically $21 billion to help rebuild the military. I think that is something that he was very proud to campaign on and is delivering on. That's probably the biggest thing. With respect to border security, he got $1.52 billion into the current language that's posted. I think that's a significant, and remember, I think people have to keep in context. We're talking about 2017 funding, right? So this is something that most presidents would walk into office and that would have been done. Because the last Congress didn't do this under President Obama, we have an opportunity to get some of the president's priorities infused for the last 5 months of 2017. That's a big step forward. And something that he'll continue to fight for in 2018. When the fiscal year starts the end of September, we will have an opportunity to really infuse the president's priorities. But I think there's a lot there. And there's also DC school choice was something that we felt very strongly about making sure was back in. There's no Obamacare bailout. There's the coal miners is something that the president felt very strong on making sure they got taken care of. That happened. So there's a lot in this bill that I think of the priorities that he put forward on.
But clearly you had to give up on some things.
No, I mean, I think on the Planned Parenthood thing in particular, but again, remember, this is 2017 funding. This is something that he wouldn't normally even had a shot at because it should have been done. So infusing his priorities in the 2017 budget cycle is actually something that he's been able to have a say in, which is a big deal for the remaining 5 months. The 2018 budget will will address those things. But this is a down payment on border security. It's a down payment on his ability to rebuild the military. And repealing and replacing Obamacare will address a lot of the other healthcare issues.
And the other issue I had, on the pending visit of Duterte from the Philippines, Chris Coons said that the president is giving his stamp of approval to human rights abuses. Governor John Sununu, on the other hand, said this is part of the unpleasant things that presidents have to do. What's the White House's perspective on Duterte and him coming here?
Well, I think it is an opportunity for us to work with countries in that region that can help play a role in diplomatically and economically isolating North Korea. And frankly, the national interests of the United States, the safety of our people and the safety of people in the region are the number one priorities of the president. Mike.
I wanted to ask about tax deductions. The White House has talked a little bit about that as a way to curb big tax breaks for the rich. Are you looking at any other policy changes when it comes to limiting breaks for the top 1%?
Well, we're at the beginning of this process. What I think you saw from the briefing that was given the other day, the focus on this is really at lower and middle income Americans. The doubling of the standard deduction means that a family of four that is making, right now they're getting a $24,000 deduction, which means in a lot of cases you're going to see a family pay zero taxes at the lower end of the economic scale. That's a big deal for them to really help put more money back in their pocket and help them take care of their family. Try.
Thanks, Sean. On healthcare, there seems to be a new optimism from the White House. How confident is the president that he will get a healthcare bill passed the House this week?
I think the president has made it clear that he's not instituting a timeline. I've said this before, and I'll continue to say that we feel confident the direction this is going. We see more and more members come on board. A lot of the changes were made make the bill not only better, but garner greater support. So we feel very good about it.
On North Korea, today the president told Bloomberg he was open to meeting with Kim Jong-un if the conditions were right. How does the president define the right condition to have this meeting?
Well, there's a lot of things that go along with that, and I think that's the key thing. Under the right circumstances was, I believe, the phrase he used, and I think that is something in keeping with our consistent with the policy expressed by Secretary Tillerson as well. We've got to see their provocative behavior retched down immediately. There's a lot of conditions that I think would have to happen with respect to its behavior, and to show signs of good faith. Clearly, the conditions are not there right now, but I think the president's made it clear, as Secretary Tillerson had the other day, that if the conditions, if the circumstances present themselves, we would be prepared to, but they're clearly not at this time.
Thanks, Sean. Picking up on healthcare, it's believed possibly that you might be down, Republicans down to maybe just a handful of votes away. Here we are at 2 o'clock Monday afternoon. Is this the closest that you think you've gotten? I know you don't want to talk about timelines, but is this as close to maybe getting to that magic 216 number that you've talked about?
Well, sure. I mean, we're not going to, once we get 216, we'll stop counting, and I think the speaker gets that. But as I mentioned to Trey, I mean, we're getting closer and closer every day. So I would assume that today we were closer than we were a week ago. But we're not there yet. And that decision is going to be wholly within the speaker, the majority leader, and the whip to let us know when they're going to open that vote up.
And let me ask you about Dodd-Frank. The president just gave an interview in which he said, I am looking at that right now. He goes on to say there's some people that want to go back to the old system, right? So we're going to look at that, meaning potentially breaking up the banks. So breaking up the banks, going back to Glass-Steagall, is that something that he is just looking at, or is that something that is a preference of his at this point?
I think I mentioned it in the opening. He's looking at a 21st century Glass-Steagall. That it's something that we've talked about at the beginning. He mentioned this on the campaign trail. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but it is something that is currently being looked at. Sarah?
Thanks, Sean. So you're saying that you're not confident that the votes are lined up behind the health care bill. So this morning when Gary Cohn said that the bill was ready to be brought to the floor, did Gary Cohn misspeak?
No, I would never want to get in front of the speaker. That's up to them. I mean, we have a good whip count. I think we feel very good about where we are and where it's headed. But ultimately, the speaker and the House leadership determine when to call a vote. I think that we know that when the vote gets called, we'll feel confident that it's going to be able to pass. Zeke?
Hey, Sean, the president on the campaign trail raised alarm about federal debt and deficits.
this spending bill that would get us through the end of the fiscal year doesn't include any of the offsets really that the president requested in this year's budget. Is the president, will the president sign this agreement that does increase the federal deficit?
I think we got a number of the president's priorities included in the CR. When we are at the final point, the president will make a decision. But right now, he's pleased to see the plus up for the military. He's pleased to see a down payment on border security. He's pleased about the DC opportunity scholarships. There's a lot that he's pleased in, and I think again, as I mentioned to John, we're getting a shot at the 2017 funding, which should have been done last year. So
you call for keeping that balance, essentially.
I understand that, and I think that obviously, this is something that required 60 votes in the Senate. We couldn't have our entire way on this, but we're 5 months away from having a 2018 budget, and I think the president's priorities will be reflected much more in that. Annie?
You made comments when asked about press freedom. You said that journalists are not exempt from assassination. Did the president know about those comments and about his record of human rights abuses when he extended the invitation for him to visit the White House?
I mean, the president gets fully briefed on the leaders that he's speaking to, obviously, but the number one concern of this president is to make sure that we do everything we can to protect our people, and specifically to economically and diplomatically isolate North Korea. And I think when you look at what he is doing in terms of building that coalition of countries in that region to do it, I think this is hopefully going to have. Well, he knows. I mean, I'm not going to tell you every single thing that's in his brief, but he's well aware of when he speaks with a leader. He gets briefed on a lot about what they're doing, what they've done. That's all part of the brief. Mara,
question just about the future of Sebastian Gorka. Can you tell us why he's leaving the White House?
There's no personnel announcement at the time. I have no belief that he is currently leaving the White House. So there's nothing to update you on with respect to that, and we wouldn't comment on personnel matters at this time. Mara.
John, I have a healthcare and an Israel question on healthcare. When the president talks about a guarantee for pre-existing conditions, current law says insurance companies have to sell to people with pre-existing conditions, and they can't charge them more than someone else in that area. Is that the guarantee that the president wants?
So the bill does not remove Obamacare's guaranteed issue requirement.
Right.
That's it. And on the community ratings, the bill would allow states to waive Obamacare's community rating requirement if certain conditions designated to preserve access to coverage from people with pre-existing conditions are met. And there are reduced average premiums, increased enrollment, stabilize the market, stabilize premiums for those with pre-existing. The bottom line is to try to give the states flexibility to actually get that premium down.
Right, but people with pre-existing conditions would continue to get access, but not at the same price as other people.
Well, the idea is actually they would create a high-risk pool. The idea is actually to create a system where it gets the premium down for them as well.
Right, high-risk pools could still charge them much more.
No, but you can't keep saying, you're right. When I say the whole goal of this is to give the states the flexibility to get lower premiums. That's the goal all around, is to make sure that the system that we employ gets it down. John Gizzi. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Sean. The president turned to Bibi Netanyahu at that press conference and famously said settlements are not helpful. Israel is going to build 15,000 new homes in East Jerusalem. Does he think that Netanyahu is snubbing him?
We're going to have a conversation. I'm sure that we'll continue to have conversations with the prime minister, and so I'm not going to. That'll be something that the president will continue to discuss. John.
Thank you.
Oh, we'll do two Johns.
Okay. Let me go first, Chuck. All right, sound good?
It's quite a negotiation. we may need you.
From the art of the deal.
John.
Thank you, Sean. I wanted to ask about some news the president made this morning in an interview that he conducted with Bloomberg. In that interview, he talked about the possibility of raising gas taxes to pay for infrastructure spending. And of course, the president has put forward the idea of $1 trillion infrastructure spending plan. Can you talk a little bit more about this possibility of raising gas taxes?
Yeah, so what the president said during that interview is that folks from the industry had come to him and expressed to him how the deteriorating roads were affecting their ability to deliver goods and services throughout this country, and that they had expressed a willingness to see something like that as a way to help pay for and repair the roads and bridges, and that he said that he, out of respect, would definitely listen to them and consider it. That's.
As it Relates to this idea that the gas tax in America hasn't been raised for some time. What makes the president believe that now is the time that Republicans who have been opposed to this idea would be open to this idea?
I think you're missing he did not express support for it. He expressed that a group that had met with him expressed support with it, and that he, out of respect, would consider their request. That's it. There was no endorsement of it or support for it. He was just relaying what another industry group had shared with him about how to pay for the roads and bridges that need to be repaired, and the impact that deteriorating roads and bridges are having on their ability to operate and to deliver goods and services, and frankly, the cost that it is having on their trucks, on their infrastructure. John Gizzi.
You have not foreclosed this possibility of raising.
No, I think people ask the president all the time, please consider the following policy, and he has an open mind. I mean, there are people on both sides of the aisle, different backgrounds, that come in to see the president and ask him, could you please consider this? Will you keep an open mind on it? And I think that's frankly what the president was doing. John Gizzi.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, John. And thank you, John. I have two questions, one foreign policy and one on domestic politics. First, last Wednesday, the Kremlin outlawed the Open Russia movement, the premier opposition group to the ruling regime in Russia, and the following day, security forces were forcibly closing down Open Russia's office in Moscow and other places. Does the administration have a statement on this?
I do not. I would refer you to the State Department.
All right. My second question is, on Sunday, Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Layton, a 14-term veteran of the House, past chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, announced her retirement. Her statement comes on the heels of a similar announcement by Congressman Chaffetz, and before that, only a few weeks ago, Lynn Jenkins of Kansas. That's three respected Republican House members, all calling it quits. Is the president concerned about the number of Republican House members who do not want to be on the ballot next time and are leaving Congress?
No, and I respectfully, I would say that there are two groups of folks. I mean, in the case of Congresswoman Ross-Layton, I think she's been here 35 years, and she 28. And so she's just decided that it's time to retire. In the case of Congressman Chaffetz, he announced that, that doesn't. I don't think that there's any belief that you have to stay here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. There's always going to be churn between election cycles between members of both parties who decide for a number of reasons to go back home, and I think that's a healthy part of the democracy, and that's frankly something that our framers saw as citizen legislature. So to some degree, that's a healthy part of it, but we feel very confident about where we stand. Jennifer.
Sean, the president opted not to continue Obama's tradition of holding an Easter prayer breakfast, but he is holding a National Day of Prayer event. Was that a scheduling issue, or did he think, what was the thought process there? I really don't know. I know that we wanted to do this National Prayer Breakfast this Sunday, and I think you're going to see a lot of folks represented. I don't know enough about Obama's thing, how far back it went, but each president's going to have their own traditions, and I think this is one that the president, that morning after you've got the Easter egg roll and there's a lot going on, this is his way of starting a tradition here at this White House to bring faith leaders from a variety of backgrounds here to the White House.
Sean.
Eamon.
Thanks, Sean. Back to Glass-Steagall for a second. As you can imagine, the president's comments today are getting a lot of attention on Wall Street. So can we be just very clear about this? Does the president favor breaking up the big banks?
I think he talked about on the campaign trail, and he's mentioned it before, this idea of a 21st century Glass-Steagall, a modernization of it, and we're not at a point where we're ready to roll out details of that yet. This is something, as the president said in that interview, he is actively looking at options and considering things. We're not at a position to make any announcements on this at this time.
Any steps toward that behind the scenes that we're not aware of?
Well, I mean, he's obviously been briefed by his advisors. Secretary Mnuchin and others have given him ideas and thoughts to ponder. We have nothing to announce at this time. Todd.
Thanks, John. So the lack of border wall funding raises a question of just how serious the president is about getting the border wall constructed. Is it not urgent? Is it not an emergency anymore to build this barrier? What is the timetable and deadline that he has in mind?
Well, make no mistake, the wall is going to be built. The president has made it very clear. We have 5 months left in this fiscal year.
We're getting $1.52 billion for border security. There's a lot that can be done with that. We've got a lot of things that happen before the wall is built in terms of planning, technology, gates. There's a lot of things that can do to prepare for that wall being constructed. This was a down payment for 2017, and as we get ready for fiscal year 2018, that'll start in the beginning of October. This will be a major priority.
It will be built, is there a time certain, is there a deadline by the end of 2018?
Well, that it'll be completed. I know the president wants it done as quick as possible. There have been bids that have been put out. Part of what the Homeland Security Department is reviewing now, or not just the cost, but the timetable for a lot of that. So as we move through the planning phase, that's definitely going to be part of the consideration. But obviously, the president wants it done as soon as possible. Jonathan.
Coming back to North Korea, the president didn't just say that he would be open to meeting with Kim Jong-un under the right circumstances. He said he would be honored to meet with him. This is somebody who has starved his own people, somebody that has threatened to destroy the United States. Just last week, he put out a video showing the Capitol getting destroyed by North Korean fighters. How could he be honored to meet with Kim Jong-un?
Well, the president understands the threat that North Korea poses, and he will do whatever is necessary under the right circumstances to protect our country from the threat that they pose.
How would that be an honor?
Well, Jonathan, I guess because he is still the head of state, so it is sort of there's a diplomatic piece to this, but the bottom line is the president's going to do what he has to do right now. He's building a coalition in the region to isolate North Korea, both economically and diplomatically, to get the threat, to take that threat down. But that is his number one priority right now, is protecting this country and our people.
What did he mean when he called him one smart cookie, or a pretty smart cookie?
Well, I think his point was he went over this in the interview, that he assumed power at a young age when his father passed away, and there was a lot of potential threats that could have come his way, and he's obviously managed to lead a country forward, despite the obvious concerns that we and so many other people have. He is a young person to be leading a country with nuclear weapons, and so that set aside, I think the president recognizes the threat that he posed and is doing everything he can to isolate that threat and to make sure that we bring stability to the region. Margaret.
Sean, on North Korea and then on Philippines. On North Korea, both with the president's comment on Kim Jong-un and what Secretary Tillerson said, you seem to be making the offer that we could have direct talks with North Korea. Who's going to be leading those?
Please, yeah. I think that the key part of the president's statement was under the right circumstances, and that is the key. And those circumstances do not exist now. This is consistent with what Secretary Tillerson said the other day. But I think that if North Korea continues down a degree of provocative behavior, then those circumstances will never be there. But we want to hold out the possibility that if North Korea were ever serious about completely dismantling its nuclear capability and taking away the threat that they pose both to the region and to us, that there's always going to be a possibility of that occurring. That possibility is not there at this time.
Who would lead that? Is that
Well,
the White House or the State
we're not.
Department?
We're so far away from that possibility existing. To start identifying an individual would be highly premature.
Philippines.
Huh?
Philippines.
Yeah.
When you have been asked about President Duterte and his human rights record, you continue to say the effort here is to isolate the Philippines from North Korea. Part of this coalition to
Well, to
isolate
also
North Korea.
build a
Are you suggesting that the Philippines has some sort of inappropriate contact with North Korea? Are you suggesting that we are requesting greater access perhaps to their military bases? What is it exactly?
Well, I think there's an economic piece to this as well, and I'm not going to go into. That's part of the reason that I think the president wants to meet with him. And I'm not going to get ahead of their discussions, but I would suggest to you that there are multifaceted ways and areas in which not just the Philippines, but other countries in the region can help play a role, both economically, diplomatically, and otherwise, to help deter the threat that they pose.
Are you suggesting, though, that they are trading or conducting some kind of...
No, I'm not going to, like I said...
When you say economic peace, that's what I just want to clarify.
Right, and again, I'm just going to let the president will have an opportunity to speak with him about those objectives. At this time, I'm not going to get ahead of that discussion. Glenn.
Sean, two quick related questions. First of all, you just described Kim Jong-un as somebody who led his country forward at an early age. The president has invited Duterte, who, as Annie pointed out, has talked about assassinating journalists. The president put out a statement after Erdogan won his referendum, congratulating him. He said kind things about Putin during the campaign, said kind things about Saddam Hussein. Does the president have a thing with these totalitarian leaders? Does he admire something about the way these guys conduct themselves?
No, the president clearly, as I've said, understands the threat that North Korea poses. Having someone with the potential nuclear capability to strike another country, and potentially our country at some point in the future, is something the president takes very seriously. And so the idea that he is doing everything diplomatically, economically, and militarily to consider every way to prevent that threat from taking on the United States is something. I understand that. Unfortunately, those are the neighbors. There's certain things. Those are the countries in the region. Those are the countries that can be helpful as we move forward to try to prevent the threat that they pose.
One follow-up question. On Sunday, Chief of Staff Priebus, talking to this gentleman right here, said, with respect to the libel laws and the First Amendment, quote, talking about news outlets that printed false articles, quote, I think it's something that we've looked at. How that gets executed or whether that goes anywhere is a different story. Is that a project that is currently being worked on by the counsel's office? Can you just tell me the status of that? Who is pursuing that?
I think the Chief of Staff made it very clear that that is something that is being looked into substantively and then both logistically how it would happen. But that's nothing new. It's something the president talked about on the campaign trail.
Is the council actually
I will not go into, but I just tell you that it's going to be.
Two questions. One on, just to clarify on North Korea, were those conditions that you laid out the earlier question, are those the conditions that would have to be met before there was any meeting, i.e. that North Korea would have to agree to totally disarm its nuclear program, stop threatening their neighbors? Are those the conditions?
I think those are some of the conditions. There's going to be a whole host of ones that we determine, that the State Department determines in consultation with the president that have to be met. As I mentioned, we are so early into this process that I don't see this happening anytime soon. But I think that, as the president, like I said, under the right circumstances, those circumstances aren't present today, and there would have to be significant change for that to even be a possibility.
Okay, and a question on a separate subject. The chief executives of United Airlines will be on the Hill tomorrow. Is the president at all... Does the president think that Congress should pass any laws after the incident last month where the passenger was dragged off? Should there be more done to protect passengers on airplanes from those type of incidents?
I think there's two things. One is I think the industries probably need to, and have said that they've taken a look at how they're handling a number of issues within that. Both in terms of compensation, how they're handling passengers who are on planes. So there's an industry component, and then I'll leave it up to Congress to decide whether or not it's appropriate to address it legislatively. Once there was a piece of legislation, then we could, we would have an opportunity to weigh in that. Cecilia.
So I would ask you to clarify something else the president said. He said, I don't stand by anything. How is the American public supposed to digest that, supposed to trust what the president says when he himself says of his own comments, I don't stand by anything?
What are you referring to?
It's in the CBS interview with John Dickerson in the Oval Office.
I need the more context.
It was about wiretapping. He was asked to, if he still believes President Obama is a bad or evil guy. Do you still stand by those comments? And the president said, I don't stand by anything.
No, that was a long back and forth exchange, and that's why I'm asking for the context. But I think the point is he clearly stands by that. That's something that he made very clear if you look at the entire back and forth.
Sean, two questions on the Philippines. First, is President Trump comfortable with the leader's support of extrajudicial killings of drug users in the country?
Obviously, there's a human rights component that goes into all of this. And so it's a balance. We want to make sure that our country, our people are protected. This isn't a simple yes or no kind of situation. You've got a country in North Korea that possesses a nuclear weapon and is looking for the appropriate delivery system to potentially do harm. I think the president recognizes that the number one priority is the protection of our people, the safety of our people, and the safety of the people in the region. And so it's not just a question of either or. It's a question of priorities and balance. There's a lot that the president talks to these leaders in private about. And I think you saw that case in Egypt, where sometimes that kind of diplomacy, privately talking about them and building a relationship, can achieve results, not just for our people, but for their people. and discussing how the human rights issues. But I think that it would be a mistake to assume that the president, because we don't put out statements publicly chastising leaders at every call, means that the president's not. Hold on. Let me answer the question. I think the president understands the value of it, but he understands the balance. And the reason that the president is building an effective coalition, is getting results around the globe and reasserting America's place, is because he understands the type of diplomacy and the type of negotiating and the type of deal making that actually gets real results for our country. So I think it's not a balancing, it's a balancing act, but the president's getting real results. Cheryl.
Second question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Looking at, there are 3 open patents with the Philippines government, one from Trump trying to get Trump patented, 2 from Ivanka Trump for her clothing line. How do you respond to concerns about potential conflicts of interest with the leader of the Philippines?
I think the president and Ivanka have done everything in compliance, made it very clear, and I would refer you to the Trump organization. Cheryl.
I just want to clarify something you said to Zeke. Is there a possibility that the president would not sign this spending agreement?
No, I mean, he's very pleased with the priorities, but I just want to, let's wait till it's presented to him. But he is obviously very pleased with how his priorities were addressed in the CR, and I have every expectation that he would sign it. But let's wait till it's on his desk.
Are you still on track to issue the full fiscal year 18 budget? Is it mid-May, or do you have a date for that?
I'll tell you about my understanding was it was still mid-May, but I'd want to consult with Director Mulvaney first. Jim.
Thanks, Sean. Just wanted to first ask what's your expectation and what's your hope for the meeting with President Abbas on Wednesday? And secondly, is the president still considering moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, and will that be discussed?
That is still being discussed by staff. And then what was this first question? I'm sorry.
The first question is your expectations going forward.
Well, obviously, the president's ultimate goal is to establish peace in the region. And so I think he's going to, that's obviously the goal and the discussion that he's going to have with the head of the Palestinian Authority. But there's, that's going to be a relationship that he continues to work on and build with the ultimate goal that there's peace in that region in between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. Alexis.
I follow up on infrastructure. The president has been talking about a major infrastructure package for more than a year in the campaign, but it doesn't seem very clear right now what the mechanism is for the construction of whatever it is that he wants to push forward. He talked about maybe attaching it to the reconciliation package for healthcare. He talked about maybe doing that with the tax package. Can you update us on, is that still very preliminary in its invention? Does he have clear ideas, and what's the mechanism and timing to get that done?
I think he does. He's been working on that with his both economic and policy team. But this week we're a little busy with the CR and healthcare. He laid out the tax package last week, but it is clearly still up there on the priority list. Let's get through this week, and then hopefully have some additional details moving forward. But he has been very clear that that infrastructure package is something that he wants to get done and get moving. This year, yeah, absolutely. And it's just a question of when he wants to announce it. But I think for this week, we're pretty focused on getting the government funded for the last 5 months of 2017 and getting healthcare done as soon as we can. So with that, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Thank you.
That will end the White House press briefing for today, guys. I'm going to bring you back to the active shooter situation in Dallas. Check this out. This is still ongoing. Right underneath me here, lower right-hand corner of your screen is a picture, an aerial view of the police presence. Look at that. It has almost doubled or tripled since we last looked at it. This is still an active situation here. We do have some new information. If you were with us earlier, if you're back, thanks for joining us here. I'm going to go through these pictures that you see, top left-hand corner of your screen, just scrolling through them, of the situation. You can see the police gathering, comforting each other. The emergency room, this is where the paramedic, we learned, was shot with a rifle by this suspect and then transported to the hospital here where he is in critical condition. Going through these for now. I'm going to bring you back to here it is, the situation, Dallas manhunt underway. Some more information that police are confirming is that this was a possibly suicidal man who is still on the loose, as far as our knowledge. And our reporter down there, from Fox 4, says unconfirmed reports say that the suspect may have had a girlfriend who lives in this general vicinity, who reportedly tried to get him help on Sunday night, but he had some sort of breakdown and refused. Now, those are unconfirmed reports from a reporter down there at Fox 4. But continuing to monitor the situation, we do know that a paramedic was rushed to Baylor Hospital for surgery and is in critical condition. Now, we also, the latest tweet from Dallas police tells us that right here, please keep the injured EMT, that paramedic, and his family in your thoughts and prayers. That is the latest tweet from Dallas Police Department. Now, earlier we brought you the tweet from the Dallas Police Association. Now we've been following the Dallas PD, and they've been tweeting this out with lots of likes, lots of comments, prayers for this paramedic, who are just doing all that they can to protect the city. So that's what we know right now. Police are still looking for this gunman who is on the loose in the neighborhood. New information about his description. He is described as a black male, about 5'8", with a faded green t-shirt. That's what we know of sort of the colors that he's wearing, and what might be worth looking out for if in that area. Now, residents have been asked to stay indoors and take cover in that area, as it is still a very active, dangerous area. Looking for this suspect, this Dallas manhunt, still ongoing throughout that whole White House press briefing. I was monitoring these aerials and wanted to make sure I brought you the latest information from Dallas. So again, the pictures coming out of the scene right here, scrolling through these. More from the chopper. This was a still shot brought from the chopper. Lots of police presence, and then these closer ups of police officers comforting each other in the wake of the incident that left a paramedic critically injured, is in critical condition at Baylor Hospital. So that's all that we have for now of this situation. People continuing to keep this injured EMT in their prayers, and not much more than that. If you would like to continue monitoring the situation out of Dallas, please do stay tuned to our Facebook page, as well as the Fox 4 Facebook page. Everything will continue to be updated on our social media. That is going to be it for our live show today, guys. We want to thank you for joining us on our YouTube stream. You can join us every day, weekdays from 11:30 to 2 o'clock or so into the afternoon. As we have breaking news and events, we'll bring it to you. So continue to check us out on YouTube and Facebook, and tweet at us, Snapchat us, whatever you want, Instagram us. We'll be here. Fox 5 DC, guys. That's going to be it for us. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday, May 2nd, for another edition of Fox 5 Live, the show. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. We're going to leave you with a shot of the Capitol Dome.